Listen, the number 10 bus from Halfway Tree to Spanish Town rattled like my grandmother's old pressure cooker. Angry, stubborn, but reliable enough to get you where you needed to go. I had my route card clipped to the dash, my knife roll tucked behind my seat like a sleeping baby, and exactly 43 minutes until my shift at the hotel kitchen. The radio was playing some old Bob Marley, the driver humming off key. I was thinking about jerk pork for lunch, maybe some festival bread if Miss Chen still remembered my face at her stall Tuesday routine. Same road, same stops, same hunger for something better than the tourist food I'd been plating for 3 years. That's when the road decided to rewrite itself. 1 second, I'm counting potholes and watching schoolchildren dodge traffic. The next, asphalt cracked like an egg, light spilled out white and wrong, and the world tilted sideways into something that tasted of green electricity and old thunder. My seat lurched, breath punched out of my lungs. The route card fluttered like a dying bird. Then I was falling, not down but through, falling through green sound into a forest that hummed like a speaker left on overnight, harmonizing with itself in frequencies that made my teeth ache. No bus, no road, no halfway tree morning rush, no route to ride. I hit moss-covered ground knees first, palms down, grit biting deep enough to remind me I still had skin. A crow perched on a branch, head tilting like a judge taking notes. Above me, 2 moons hung in afternoon sky, pale as old bones, watching like they'd been expecting me for years. Well, I said to the empty air, voice steadier than it had any right to be. This is definitely not Spanish Town. The forest answered with bird calls, tight little rhythms, tick-tick, scurrup, syncopated like Studio One rhythm if Studio One had been produced by something that never heard of Jamaica but understood the mathematics of groove. Between the calls, silence thick as cassava starch. Intentional silence, like something was listening, taking inventory of the stranger who'd fallen through their ceiling. I pushed myself up, joints checking in one by one, knees bruised but functional, ribs intact, head ringing like a church bell but clear good. I rolled my shoulders, testing the machinery. I'm Mark Campbell, Jamaican chef. My hands learned fire before they learned rest, learned salt before they learned fear, learned hunger before they learned shame. I feed people or I die trying. Been cooking since I was tall enough to reach the stove. Been traveling since I was brave enough to leave home. Been surviving since survival became the only skill that mattered. But this place? This place wanted to feed me first. I stood slow, hands open, reading the clearing like a menu I'd never seen before but somehow recognized. Tall ferns formed a collar around trees with silver-veined leaves. Some of those leaves caught light wrong, shimmering in shade like they remembered starlight, like they were hoarding secrets in their chlorophyll. My stomach spoke first, always does. Feed yourself, then figure out the paperwork. Grandmother's first lesson, delivered with a wooden spoon tap to the knuckles. Your cheer help nobody if your belly singing opera, Mark. I checked my pockets. Lighter. Good. Small knife for fruit. Better. The big blades were in the roll if the roll had made the trip. I looked around and spotted it. Leather worn soft as prayer. Lying under a fern like it had been placed there, gentle, I crawled over and unrolled it on the moss. 8 knives, each one a conversation I'd had with steel and time. Chef's knife, boning, utility, para, their faces polished by years of soap and argument. I pressed my thumb to the chef's edge. Still sharp. Still honest. All right, I told them. We're a long way from the hotel kitchen, but food is food and hungry is hungry. Let's see what this place has to teach us. The stream wasn't honest water. It glowed faint mercury, each ripple throwing dim light like coins skipped by a child who'd never learned physics. Tiny fish flickered inside. Quick, silver, iridescent backs, catching that strange radiance as they darted between stones that hummed with barely audible music. I knelt at the bank, cupped my hands, brought the water to my lips. Clean, bright, cold enough to make my teeth sing, with a whisper of stone underneath, like mountain water that had spent centuries learning patience and wanted to teach some to any mouth willing to listen. Right then, I said, because talking to yourself in strange places is better than listening to what might talk back. Survival is a recipe, just need to find the ingredients. Here's something most people don't know about hunger. It's the best teacher you'll ever hate. Strips away everything fancy, everything proud, everything that pretends to matter, more than the simple truth of feeding yourself and moving to the next hour. When you're hungry, really hungry, not just I could eat, hungry, your body becomes a hunting animal. Your eyes sharpen, your nose awakens, your hands remember skills your mind never learned. I let hunger walk through me like a surveyor taking measurements, pointing out possibilities. Those silver fish, if I could catch them. Mushrooms tucked under fallen logs, if they were safe berries on bushes, if they weren't poison dressed as promises. But the leaves that shimmered called to me first, insistent as aunties at Sunday dinner. Broad, green, slick with life. They looked like Kalalu's distant cousin, if Kalalu had grown up in a place where light, bent, funny, and magic sat at the table without apologizing. Spellroot. The word slid into my mouth before I earned it, tasting of soil and secrets. Like my grandmother's voice, if my grandmother had lived in forests that hummed back when you touched them. If a garden had grown ingredients for recipes that existed only in the space between breath and blessing. I reached for one stem, then stopped. Respect first. I knelt, pressed my palm to the earth. I'm not here to steal, I said quietly. I'm here to learn, I'm here to eat. If you're willing to teach, I'm willing to listen. The wind shifted, carrying a scent like green earth after rain, like wild garlic having an argument with mint and winning. I took that as permission. I broke one stem careful like the way you test a new knife against your thumb. Clear sap bled out, aromatic enough to make my salivary glands wake up and take notice. The scent hit deeper than smell should. Not just in my nose, but behind my eyes, in the hollow of my throat, like the plant was introducing itself directly to my nervous system. Interesting, I murmured, then caught myself grinning. Fear and excitement taste the same until you bite down hard enough to find out which one you're actually chewing. Want to know the difference between surviving and cooking? Surviving feeds the body, cooking feeds the soul. Right now, with 2 moons watching and forest humming approval, I chose cooking. Fire came easier than it should have. The silver bark peeled away in strips, and when I scraped the resin underneath, it caught with my lighter, like it had been waiting all day for this introduction. Blue flame licked up, not the yellow-orange I expected, singing a low note that vibrated my teeth like a tuning fork for frequencies I'd never heard before. The flame wanted to burn blue at the edges, like it had opinions about what color fire should be in a place where physics ran on different software. I rigged a fishhook from a bent twig, stripped a length of shirt for line. Basic survival, but with intention. I whispered to the stream, I need to eat. I promised not to be greedy. Then I cast. The fish came willing. More than willing. Eager, almost grateful, like they knew they were part of something larger than lunch. Part of a story that needed telling through taste and flame, and the simple act of one creature feeding another. I caught 3, cleaned them with my fruit knife, giving thanks to each life that would sustain mine. Set aside the good meat, scattered the rest for whatever had been watching me from the tree line. I could feel eyes, patient and curious. Not hunting, just witnessing, learning. Maybe deciding whether this stranger who'd fallen through their sky deserved the courtesy of not being eaten himself. The first fish went on a flat stone near the fire just to test the heat. The sizzle sounded exactly right. Confident, not panicked. The silver skin crisped and pulled back, revealing flesh that flaked at the touch of my knife tip. Good, I said. We're speaking the same language. But the spell root leaves, those were the real conversation. I gathered a handful, chose them like I was selecting produce at Coronation Market. Leaves that felt firm, but not tough. Green that sang health, rather than screamed desperation. I rinsed them in the glowing stream until the water lost its shine and ran clear. No pot, so I improvised. Took 3 broad leaves, wove them into a basket tight enough to hold liquid if I was gentle. Set that on a tripod of damp branches above the blue flame primitive. Yes, effective. We'd find out. All right then, I said to the fish, to the leaves, to the forest that was pretending not to eavesdrop on my kitchen prayers. Let's make this proper. I crushed the spell root stems between my palms, slow and deliberate, feeling the fibers break down and release their secrets. The sap slicked cool against my skin, almost mint cold, but with an undertone that reminded me of fresh garlic crushed under the flat of a knife. Steam rose from my hands. Not hot steam, but something else. Something that made the air shimmer like heat waves over asphalt in August. Into the leaf basket it went, coating the fish like a marinade that had been waiting its whole life for this moment. This fire. This hungry stranger who'd learned to cook before he'd learned to lie. The forest leaned closer. I felt it like pressure against my back, curiosity older than cities, patient as rain. Steam began to rise, and the steam hummed. Not loud, not overwhelming. Just enough that the hair on my arms lifted like static before lightning. Like the moment before a storm, when the air gets thick and every bird falls silent. The forest held its breath. Come on then, I whispered to the dish, to the forest, to whatever gods were watching through the curl of aromatic air. Tell me what you want to say. This is where cooking becomes alchemy. Not the flashy kind with explosions and colored smoke. The quiet kind, where ingredients stop being separate things and become something new. Something that didn't exist before you brought fire and intention together in the same space. The leaf basket settled over the blue flame like it had been designed for this purpose. The spell root released its essence into the air, and the fish absorbed it. Skin taking on a sheen that wasn't quite oil, wasn't quite light, but something in between. The aroma built in layers, earth first, then the clean mineral taste of the stream, then something wilder underneath, something that made my mouth water and my spine straighten. I turned the fish with a wooden splinter I'd whittled smooth, treating each piece like it contained someone's last meal, someone's first blessing. The flesh turned opaque, flaking at the gentle nudge of my makeshift tool. Perfect texture, cooked through but not tough, warm but not burned. I said grace like a secret, the kind you keep even when your gods have moved to new addresses and forgotten to leave forwarding information. Then I took the first bite. The world snapped into lines. Spell root hit my tongue like a key turning in a lock I hadn't known was there. Silky green, like callaloo done right. No bitterness, no compromise. Just earth and rain and something wild underneath that my taste buds recognized even though my brain had never filed a report about it. The fish melted. Sweet muscle and clean fat, carrying the essence of stream song and moonlight. But it was the warmth that changed everything. The warmth didn't stop at my mouth. It traveled behind my eyes like a gentle hand, opening shutters I didn't know were closed. Light flooded in. Not brighter light, but clearer light. Light that carried information instead of just illumination. Sound unbraided itself into component parts. I heard a beetle on the bark, knowing in perfect triplets like a tiny drummer keeping time for an orchestra only insects could hear. The stream spoke in stone syllables, each bubble and gurgle a word in a language I was suddenly fluent in. The bird calls separated into sections, alto there, bass here, a percussion line tapped against tree trunk by something patient and small and utterly content with its role in the forest symphony. Lord have mercy, I whispered and meant every syllable. Smell went feral, primal, useful. I could sort the layers like a spice cabinet in a kitchen where everything had its place and purpose. Wet fern, sharp resin, my own wood smoke, the faint musk of something large moving careful through undergrowth about 50 meters to my left. Each scent had texture, weight, direction, meaning. I could smell the health of trees, the contentment of water, the curiosity of creatures I couldn't see, but who were definitely watching this strange two-legged thing discover what its nose was actually capable of. A moth winged past, and I knew with absolute certainty, its path would skim the fire, hesitate for exactly 3 wing beats, then dart for the ferns where it would find the particular flower it had been seeking since dawn. I watched it happen exactly as the knowing predicted, and laughed out loud at the simple joy of being right about something I had no business understanding. My heartbeat slowed, deepened, but now I could hear other heartbeats threading through the forest like a percussion section warming up. Bird hearts, quick as rainfall, drumming on zinc roofing. Something larger behind the trees, patient breathing, steady pulse, no fear, just interest. And underneath it all, the ground itself had a pulse, deep as tides, slow as seasons, ancient as the first time fire met hunger and decided they made good partners. The forest hummed agreement, and I realized I was humming back, matching its frequency without thinking. My throat finding harmonies I'd never learned but somehow knew. For the first time since the bus horn had bent into impossible angles, since the road had decided to become a doorway, since I'd fallen through green sound into this place where moons wore crowns in broad daylight, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Like I'd been invited to a feast that had been waiting for me to arrive. But underneath the wonder, practical hunger still gnawed, reminding me this was just the first course. My hands knew it, even if my newly awakened senses were still celebrating their emancipation from ordinary perception. Tell me this. When did you last taste something that changed how your mouth worked? Drop that memory in the comments. I need to know what flavors unlock doors in other people's worlds, and subscribe, because what I'm about to discover in the next episode will make this forest awakening look like a warm-up act. The enhanced senses felt temporary, borrowed power, like a kitchen knife you sign out for one shift, like a grace period before the universe remembered to charge rent for miracles. I needed to use it well while it lasted. I packed the remaining fish and spell root into bark containers I'd woven, quick but careful, the way you wrap leftovers when you're not sure when your next meal is coming. But waste is a sin hungry people can't afford. The enhanced hearing was already starting to fade around the edges, but before it dimmed completely, it caught something else. Voices carrying on wind laughter. The metallic clatter of commerce. Tools meeting stone. The sound of people who'd learned to live in groups, who'd figured out the mathematics of community. And underneath it all, a bell tolling steady measures. Not alarm, too regular for that. Not celebration, too somber. Authority. The sound of time being measured, managed, controlled. Rules, I thought, and grinned, sharp enough to cut glass. Well, Rules and I have been dancing since I was tall enough to reach a stove burner. Let's see what kind of music they play in this place. I stood, oriented by sound more than sight now, letting my temporarily sharpened senses map the terrain. Smoke on the horizon, thin blue against the strange sky, where two moons played shepherd to confused afternoon light. Where there's smoke, there are people. Where there are people, there are rules about who gets to eat, who gets to cook, who gets to decide what hunger means. I shouldered my makeshift pack, tucked my knife roll under my arm like a flag I wasn't ready to surrender. The enhanced smell picked up cooking fires in the distance. Wood smoke, yes, but also the scent of food prepared without joy. Sustenance delivered with all the passion of a clerk stamping forms. Functional feeding. Survival dressed up as cuisine. That needed to change. The whisper came soft as steam, carried on wind that tasted of distant cooking fires and closer possibilities. You feed yourself. You will feed others. Not a command, an invitation. A suggestion that maybe, just maybe, the reason I've been pulled through that crack in the road wasn't random. Maybe someone or something had been waiting for a chef who understood that food without joy is just fuel. And fuel doesn't fill the holes that hunger carves in a person's chest. I started toward the smoke, counting heartbeats to match the ridden birds, letting the forest teach my feet where to step without breaking the green conversation that flowed around me like water around stones. The enhanced hearing faded as I walked, shutters closing one by one like a house settling into evening quiet. The beetles' dinner became just noise again. The moth's path became just air. The stone syllables dissolved back into the generic babble of water moving over rock. I felt the window closing and memorized what I could. Which tree had silver scars I'd carved as landmark marks? The way two moonlight angled through branches. The slope of hill that led to that distant smoke. The exact taste of spell root on a tongue that had learned new ways to be honest. When the supernatural sharpness dwindled to an aftertaste of metal and hope, I exhaled long and slow. The world returned to ordinary, which is another way to say it got heavier again. More familiar, more like the world I'd learned to navigate with just 5 senses and stubborn determination. But I could still taste the future on my tongue, kitchens that needed awakening. People who'd forgotten their mouths belonged to their bodies. Rules that had forgotten what rules were for in the first place. Communities that had traded flavor for safety. And wondered why their dreams tasted like cardboard. Behind me, the forest hummed farewell, a sound like gratitude and expectation braided together. Ahead, smoke rose from what looked like civilization, wearing the mask of order. Time to find out if they were hungry enough to bend the law for a good meal. Brave enough to remember that eating is supposed to be a celebration, not a chore. Time to see if a Jamaican chef with temporarily magical hands and permanently stubborn principles could teach a strange new world the difference between feeding and nourishing. The walk began. The real cooking was about to start. Next time on From Kingston to Iskaran. The village pot holds water and grain and fear in equal measure. Their rules are painted in chalk. No heat without permission, no flavor without oversight, no laughter without apology, but Mark carries spice that burns blue, and some hungers won't wait for paperwork to be filed in triplicate. Ready to see what happens when ancient hunger meets bureaucratic appetite? Hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments, what's the hungriest you've ever been and what did you learn about yourself when your stomach became your teacher? Because episode 2 is about to get very political, very tasty, and very dangerous for anyone who thinks food is just fuel.